Okay, so I'm gonna try and tell my story real quick. Um, I made a huge mistake. About 14 years ago, I decided to get a nose job. And you can probably see my nose is a little bit tweaked, a little bit right there. It looks pretty off center. Well, it didn't always look this way. Um, Actually, it looked a lot worse a few years ago. But now I have a piece of ear in the tip of my nose. Um, it's not exactly centered, but it's better than it used to look. I'll try and dig up a picture and post what it looked like after my first surgery, so you can see just how bad it got. Just basically had a Michael Jackson nose job. So um, I know that it was a big mistake, and telling people is really difficult because most people will immediately blame you and tell you that you know anything bad that happens to you, that's you got what's coming to you. Now, I agree with that for to a large extent, but also you have to realize that in the media and everywhere you look, you see a lot of information about people getting plastic surgery, and it's not really a big deal. You just get it, and the doctors have been doing it a long time. They know what they're doing. Um, and a lot of you might say, well, it's a really bad idea, and you would never do that. And you're right. That's a good instinct to have, but that's not the instinct that I had. I try and be a more trusting person, and I thought that these plastic surgeons and doctors were really smart people, and if they did anything that hurt you, if plastic surgery was really dangerous, that they wouldn't do it. And I thought that people like Michael Jackson asked to be that way. I thought that the people who end up with those really bad nose jobs and really bad plastic surgery, that they wanted that they're crazy, and that's what they asked for. Well, as it turns out, that's not always the case. So I went in, and I've been debating for the last 14 years why I went in. But I can tell you my original reasons were that I just wanted to look better. I wanted to look more normal, more average, so that I would look better. Um, and I didn't necessarily think I looked horrible, or there wasn't something that I was hung up on. A lot of people, they have bumps in their nose, or they've been dreaming about plastic surgery their whole life. I wasn't one of those people. I was more along the lines of um, doctors are really smart people, and plastic surgeons do this for a living. So I want to get that extra edge, and I want to look better, and they're going to be the ones to do that for me. So it was something where I wanted to selfishly sort of get a foot up on the competition. And I thought because these guys were so expensive and so good at what they do, they could make anybody better. That if you go to a plastic surgeon, they will make you look better. It doesn't matter who you are. They can find any little problem and they can make it better. Um, and they can make whatever they're going to do, it's always going to be in your benefit. Well, that's not how it works at all. And I have another video on here. I'll put it in the description where I talk about what's actually possible and what they end up doing. But more often than not, when you go into a plastic surgeon, what they're going to want to do is operate on you. And they're going to figure out a reason to operate on you. Now, should someone operate on you? That's a whole other question, and that's not something that a plastic surgeon necessarily. Probably most of them are going to even consider. And for a person like me, I who didn't have an obvious problem, I'll show a picture of myself before this happened, the original, because I had a revision. I had an original and then a revision, where I got the ear. So after the original, with my collapsed tip, I'll show you that, and I'll show you my original nose. And you can see there wasn't there wasn't obvious things to do to my original nose. There wasn't really an obvious improvement. It was just me trying to figure out, just a young guy, uncomfortable with the way he looks, trying to fit in, trying to look better. But the problem was, it wasn't actually my nose, and my nose wasn't really wrong for my face, and there was no any obvious imperfections with my nose. So that's one of the reasons why my surgery went wrong, was that there wasn't an obvious thing to fix. So me and my plastic surgeon just had to sort of wing it, you know. And I didn't. He was the one with all the experience, so he should have recognized the telltale signs of somebody who didn't really need a nose job. And now looking back, decades later, I really understand what happened, what actually happened. And what actually happened was that I was looking for validation from my culture and my society. And I was looking to go into a doctor's office and for somebody to just slap me on the back and say, you know what, you look fine. You don't need this. Get out of here. And that would have saved me about 15 years worth of pain and a lost career and tens of thousands of dollars. But that's not necessarily something that every plastic surgeon is willing to do. Maybe there are a few out there who will say that. Maybe there are some who be less extreme. But my particular plastic surgeon wasn't one of those. He was the kind of plastic surgeon who will just do anything that you ask him to do. And so me going in there, just wanting to look better, open to suggestions, let him sort of guide me and use my suggestions, which I wasn't really sure about, and run with them. And so what we end up doing was getting osteotomies, narrowing the bridge of my nose, which was a horrible mistake, and also narrowing the tip of my nose, which ultimately collapsed to a very small point. So those two operations combined made my nasal passages much smaller. So having your nasal passages smaller impacts pretty much every part of your life. The main parts would be anything physical. So if you're running, if you're biking, think of other physical things that you might like to do. Well, they all become a lot more difficult. And one of the things that I had a problem with, not just breathing, but my nose running constantly, always running, because of the narrow passages, made the amount of air coming in and out tighter. Which, if you know anything about fluid dynamics, that makes that pulls moisture out of the walls faster. So these narrower tubes and air running faster through them. And for the most part, my nose is still like that, except for that the tip is a little bit wider because of the ear cartilage cap that's in there. So the amount of space that you have in your nose, the width of your nose, is probably pretty, unless you have a problem breathing, it's probably pretty appropriate for how much air you need, or for the way that you breathe. So if you change that, at the very least, you have to change the way you breathe, which is not an easy task. It takes a lot of thinking and struggling to change the way you breathe. So I was very uncomfortable. And not only was I uncomfortable, I was also confused about the way that I looked. So having a new narrow nose, with the narrow tip of my nose, looked really strange on my Filipino, half white face. And I had a hard time socializing, going to meeting with friends, dating. All that became very difficult. Just looking at yourself in the mirror when you don't recognize yourself is very difficult. Doing something that you thought was going to improve your appearance, and then it ending up destroying the way you look, is very difficult, and no small amount of guilty feelings come with that. So now that's when it gets tough, because everybody says, not everybody, but most people will say, well, you did bring this upon yourself, you asked for it. And I guess I was testing the world a little bit to see, if I asked you to do something that would hurt me, you wouldn't really do it, would you? And the answer is some people would. Um, and now and one thing I learned is that you have to really try and figure out who would and who wouldn't, and maybe not everybody is really good deep down. Maybe some people aren't, and so for the last 15 years I spent a good portion of it struggling, going to different plastic surgeons, um, occasionally getting drunk to forget my problems. Um, Struggling a lot with my health, with just my nose primarily. Your nose and your breathing is very important, and you're aware of it every minute of the day. It's not like some other part of your body that gets hurt and you can forget about it. You're always aware of your breathing. So it's a very difficult part of your body to be damaged. Now, after the years went on, it became easier, but I still spend a significant amount of my time dealing with it. Um, I carry a lot of paper towels with me everywhere I go. I blow my nose a lot. I'm always conscious of it. I'm always thinking about it. I can't run or do anything active without having to blow the air out of the mucus out of my nose. And I'm still doing things to try and make that better, but it's been a really rough 15 years. And if I don't know what I would have done with all of my time and energy if I wouldn't have had to spend most of it um, on this problem. And it's my problem. I know I know I asked for it, um, but I don't want anybody else to make the same mistake I did. And I would hope that doctors now, or at the very least, you could recognize doctors that might mean you no good, that have poor results, that don't look out for the patients. Um, and I'd hope that some doctors care enough to not always do everything, to use their own best interests and not just act like puppets and do anything that patients want, because the patients, especially me, a young guy going in there with no experience with plastic surgery, I don't necessarily even know how it's going to work out for me. If you're a doctor and you've seen dozens of the, and the guy who did it to me, um, he was about 65 years old. If you've seen dozens of these patients, then maybe you need to take some of that responsibility and also help the patient with the decision they're making. So, um, and I know that this doctor in particular did not always make the right decisions for his patients, because he was involved in lots of lawsuits and people posting websites dedicated um, to 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 letting other people know about how messed up he was. Um, but that's one of the other things about the plastic surgery industry, is that there isn't really a lot of oversight, and you need to do a lot of your own footwork. Um, so, there's not much you can do in terms of lawsuits in places like where I live, California. You're not even allowed to sue over a certain amount of money, um, just enough so that lawyers are usually not willing to take your case, and it's not something that most people are very sympathetic to. So you, as a patient, really need to take a lot of the onus of this into your own hands and do a lot of research and figure out what your motivations are. So I made a whole other video about like what to look out for that, but um, it's a lot of these places like Real Self. You can't trust that. It's very edited. It's very much in the favor of the plastic surgeons. So back to my story. So I did try to get by with the way that my nose looked for a long time. I was kind of in denial. And when I look back at pictures of myself now during that time, I realize just how incredibly obvious and bad it looked. But I felt like I could get through it. Like I wanted to prove that I could get through it. And I was also a little confused, like, why would somebody do this to me if it didn't look better? Maybe, I was still in that mode, trying to trust this man and trying to think, trying to believe that maybe he did have good motivations and maybe I did look better. But this is just completely false. And I looked um, like like a circus show, just very bad, obvious, like something wrong, and at the very least, if not wrong, worse, much worse than my original, more proportionate nose that was wider. Looking back, I know that two people made bad decisions there. He should have given me better guidance, and I should have just never gotten anything done. I should have learned to like who I was with my perfectly functioning and proportionate nose. Yeah, I spent a good portion of the last 15 years uh, trying to figure out how to deal with this using Breathe Right strips and saline sprays and hiding all my tissues and stuff from people, not having relationships really, um, using alcohol to try and forget. Um, but after I got the last surgery with the ear tip in my nose um, by a guy named uh, Michael Schwartz, that helped significantly. Um, I might actually have to go and fix the rest of it maybe someday if I had the money. But for now, I'm just really happy I don't look like I did after my original botched surgery. Um, Incidentally, some other things I tried to do. I mean, when you have a botched plastic, I say botched because it didn't go the way that I expected it to go. It was sort of just a disaster in every sense. Um, but when you go through something like that, especially as a man, it's very taboo. I'm sure it's taboo for a lot of women too. Um, but when you go through something like that, um, it's hard to talk about with people. It's hard to talk about with your family. It's hard to talk about um, with other other young people. How many young people do you know have gone through a traumatic um, change of their facial features, who did um, a a surgery that didn't go the way they expected it to, and then they blame themselves for it. So, I felt very lonely for a long time. Um, and I started posting about it on the internet. I posted an article called "The Loneliness of Bad Plastic Surgery," and I got a lot of responses from around the world. And I finally started to talk to people, more people who are like me, who have gone through something like this. And it's helped me a lot. It's helped me sort of reconnect more with the human race, um, and feel like a person again and not just an observer or somebody who died a long time ago. Um, it's hard to be you again when you don't see yourself in the mirror, and when you've sort of lost a lot of your hopes, and when your health is worse than it was, um, and other people, and there's no one to relate to. So step one, talking about it, is really, really helpful. So I'm really grateful to all those people who responded to my blog or to my Medium article, and also to the people that I found on Instagram who started who I've been talking to through an Instagram chat, have been really amazing people. And for my health, like the revision really helped a lot, and now I'm trying to figure out the last part of my problem, which is I've got some scar tissue in here that sort of blocks my left side of my nose, and my nasal passages are kind of tight, and you can see one of my nostrils is sort of like a flat tire there. Um, so I don't know if I'm going to do like a big surgery. it's very expensive and risky. I really want to breathe better, and part of me really would rather just put all this in the past. But one thing I do want to do is be more honest about all this, and how it makes me feel and what I've gone through, because I don't like going through life feeling like I have this huge secret, and and I know I'll probably get a lot of shit over it from people who who whose lives are perfect and can't imagine making a decision like this, but but I have to talk about it now. So I'm not the only person who's done this. I'm not the only one who who felt like they needed to change the way they looked and then got punished severely for it. And also, the industry has a lot of problems um, with uh, with not being regulated and not really looking out for the patient's best interests a lot of the time. Um, so, thanks for watching this video. And if you see me on the street and you wonder why I have this big uh, scar of a tattoo on my arm, that's also because I tried to put a bunch of tattoos all over my body that would distract people from my face. It's hard to explain uh, that you got a tattoo because you had a bad nose job, but there you go. That's the reason why I have those tattoos. Um, so thanks for watching, and if I look uncomfortable out in public, or if you wonder why I am the way I am, it's now you know. And thanks to everybody in the Instagram chat and everybody who responded to my article for helping me feel less alone.